right, that I sent in?
I don't know that I saw these articles there. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We went live as we were having a back room chat. So I don't know what articles I think we're talking about today. Anyway, my name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor in Williamson County, Tennessee. I'm with my best bud, Rodney Wilds, who is with First Bank, also in Williamson County. And our show is called the Real Estate Reality Check. And all we're going to do is touch base with what's going on in the market, take the temperature of what's going on. Rodney's going to have what's called Rodney's Report. He's going to talk about whatever is on his mind. He's our lender. He's the smart guy in the room. And then at the end, we're going to talk about Reddit. And the reason why I want to bring up these Reddit stories, I've always enjoyed. These are real people with real stories, with real situations that's going on right now. And I have opinions on real estate. Rodney's going to have opinions on lending or what goes on with that kind of stuff. So we thought we'd have a conversation with that kind of stuff. So Rodney, how you doing, buddy?
Fantastic. Couldn't be better. How are you doing?
You know what? It's good to be back. We're just kind of getting our feet wet, kind of getting back up to this. I paid my taxes today, so the burden has been lifted. I'm happy.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And, I mean, I just, every time I get that done, I'm just, that pleases me. I'm happy to be able to pay taxes and have to, but I'm also really glad when the job is done. So I do want to touch base with you, Rodney. I want to know, we've been gone a couple of minutes. So is there anything new that you'd like to share? What's going on with you these days? What's going on new for you?
Man, I'm like a turtle, Andy. I just keep plugging away, doing the same thing I always do, just going to work and raising a family. I got a kid graduating UT coming up in May, so I'm excited about that.
Excellent.
And then my senior in high school is going to Spain to start his UT education in the fall. So he's going to do his first semester abroad. So we're excited about that. Other than that, life's good. The weather's getting good. And, just getting a new tariff every day and life is good.
It's every day, I tell you what, I think that's, we'll see how that's going to turn out. I have a lot of strong opinions and I like the way things are going. It's scary, all that kind of stuff. I get that. But you know what? It's that if you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. That's just, that sounds cheap and there's going to be a lot of people disagree with my take on that, but so what? So
yeah.
What I'd start with, and I think what you were asking me just before we came on live, you asked if I got the stories. Were they in your notes that I sent to you?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, are we missing anything before we get started?
No.
Okay.
I don't want to confuse you with that.
Okay, good, because you know me, when we're running, I'm single threaded. So one of the first things that some of the changes in real estate have been because of the NAR lawsuit, the lawsuit that came around in the settlement that was implemented last year. And it seems like, God, forever ago. But you know what? It's still going on and the confusion is still there. And there's stuff that I read every day about agents and people having trouble figuring out this lawsuit and how things have changed. And one of the things that was supposed to happen because of the lawsuit, and if you remember, there was a Sitzer Burnett case, I think it was up in Minneapolis or something, and they won. And so NAR, National Association of Realtors, they settled the case for $418 million instead of a couple of $1 billion. That's the reason that they settled, was because it was going to bankrupt them, is my understanding. But then they implemented a couple of rules, and one of those rules was before a real estate agent and a client, a buyer, can go look at homes, the buyer has to sign, both parties have to sign a buyer's representation agreement, a contract. If right. Rodney wanted to go see houses, the new rules starting August 17th of, hey, I'm going to pause here a minute. Angie, it is so good to see you. I see you. How's our
Hey,
California?
Angie. Yeah, it's been a minute. Our good to see you, Ange.
It's good to see you. Golly, I am so glad. That makes me happy. We can leave now. Thanks a lot, everybody. It's been a
Yeah.
great show. Um, but if Rodney wanted to go see, or if Angie wanted to go see houses, we'd have to sign a contract, and the contract is binding, meaning that we would determine ahead of time what they were going to pay me as a purveyor of real estate services, and and this is before, if we were just to meet 2 minutes ago and they wanted to see houses, we'd have to sign a contract. Well, I am telling you that has caused kind of a kerfluffle, a real confusing part of the business. It's like, I mean, Rodney, can you imagine having to do that? I mean, you can because you're in it, but do you have a take on that?
I do. This brings back a lot of memories of some of the CFPB changes or the changes after 2020. After the I guess the bad some of those bad things when CFPB come out. They made us provide documentation for loan estimates, and they had to be accurate. Basically, when I quoted a customer, I could not come back later and say, "Oh, this fee is actually this." There's a lot of fees that are locked in place, and if I miss disclosing that, then I pay for it. Right? If I say, "Okay, well, I said this charge is only going to be $50 at 75." I've got to do a cost to cure for $25 because I'm not allowed to charge that customer the
Mm-hmm.
extra $25. So where it relates to me is that I felt like that lawsuit um, was going to make a lot of changes, and the changes was like you just said, you had to have an agreement with somebody before touring home. And I know it's an uncomfortable change, and I know a lot of people don't like that change, but I do think that for the first time in real estate history, a buyer and the agent would know exactly how they're how they're dealing with each other when they go and buy that house, instead of it not being addressed and I'm just showing you houses and then whatever happens later. So I do like the change. And but if real estate agents dealing with this and they say they don't like the change, I'm not the one dealing with it. I understand it, but I do think that that was a positive. Like, that was a positive out of all of this, out of all the changes that went on with that NAR settlement. We could get on the same plane. We could communicate with each other and work out our business deal between a buyer and a buyer and an agent on the front end. And I just felt like I know it's uncomfortable, but I felt like that's the way it should have been done.
Yeah. Well, there's a different school of thought, and what it boils down to is the way that I could relate it is, well, but you're right on several points. You really kicked off a really good discussion. Here's the deal with it's forced agents, including me. It's forced us to be crystal clear on what we provide the public in terms of services. It's forced us to do that because we're reading through the document, and where we get to the commission that's owed by the buyer. Now that's changed a little. It hasn't changed, but the opportunity for sellers to not pay commissions anymore, that's a whole different thing, but that's increased. But nonetheless, it puts that commission that's owed by the buyer to the buyer agent. If they end up going to contract and the seller doesn't cover it, the buyer has to cover it. So you have to have that conversation plainly, that there is a risk that if we can't negotiate my commission by the seller, that you'll have to pay that. You have to do that. In the old days, the only time you had to have that conversation seriously was when you're dealing with a for sale by owner, because for sale by owners, the whole point of them going for sale by owner most of the time was to eliminate as much commission as possible. And so by them going for sale, by selling for sale by owner, they're eliminating what they consider the 3% for the list side. But then they're always going to negotiate against that other commission because they're just, and it's okay, they're just anti-commission. They're trying to get a better deal for themselves. Well, God bless
Right.
America. Go for
Yeah.
it. But now we have to have that conversation and in a different way, and where I'd have to say, Rodney, for a, and it used to be that commissions was baked into the sale price, so that when the listing agent and the seller worked that out behind the scenes, I'm going to say behind the scenes because it was a listing agreement, which is nobody's business but theirs, and then they would offer that commission. It's cooperative commission being shared on the other side. As a buyer, I knew what I was going to get. I knew what was on the table before we went to look at houses. Those rules are gone. And that's
Right.
where this contract comes in. And the reason it makes people uncomfortable is just to have, there's this term called working with an agent. And that means there's this trigger that nobody can define quite yet. And the trigger is, I'm working with this guy. That means that we've signed this contract, and I can share with you, Rodney, the details about the comps in the neighborhood, the condition of the house, what this house is worth, all that, all the technical data. I can share that with you. If we don't have a signed contract, I can't do that. And that's a weird thing. Somebody will
Yeah.
call and they'll say, what do you think about Rain Tree Forest? Well,
Right.
can't really tell you. It's a secret,
Yeah.
and that makes it kind of uncomfortable. And so the way we look at this is, imagine you were going out to buy a car, and you know what it is. You know what you're going to get when you go out to a car lot. They start circling. They're waiting for you. Now, you buy your cars online, I remember, but for those of us that go to car lots, they start circling, and the first guy that comes up, it would be equate to them saying, "Hey, would you like to talk about cars?" You go, "Yeah, sign here."
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's how it feels. And I mean, there is so much. If you haven't noticed, I suppose if you're on Instagram, or anybody is on Instagram, if you haven't noticed that the market has changed enough where there are systems out there where realtors are promoting themselves like crazy. I mean, there's realtor ads everywhere. The reason I bring this all up is having to sign a buyer representation agreement before you do anything doesn't give you a chance to know anybody. I'm going to stop for a minute and let you fill in the blanks there, Rodney. Do you have any particular thoughts on that before I press forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just. I think it boils back down to it's just an uncomfortable. It's just a different, uncomfortable, um, conversation that realtors going to have to get comfortable with. Like, because this is the new reality, and there, one of the big things of this settlement was designed, from, I guess, Department of Justice or whoever,
Mm-hmm.
that they wanted to make sure that the customers going forward knew what they were getting into. Like, and it's all since the seller doesn't have to pay commission, or however you want to, and that's the
Yep.
way it's
I mean,
been
that's
since
always
day
been an option,
one.
but
Right.
it's more. It's always been an option, but it's more of one now.
Right. It's and I don't know if it's real, it's just people say it now. People can say it now versus, it's not like it used to be. It was whatever. It was already agreed upon that was going to pay the
Yeah.
buyer's agent.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a conversation, I think, that just has to happen up front, and saying, this is the new laws, this is the way it is. You have to know what you're opening yourself up for. However a real estate agent presents it,
Yeah.
uh, is in their business model, and I think it's good for the consumer.
And
And it's just a conversation with a realtor, right? It's just an uncomfortable conversation with a realtor. But after that conversation, I feel like it's better for the realtor and the buyer after the conversation.
I have to agree with you on big chunks of that. But where the comp, I'm going to call it a complication. I don't know if that's the right word. If you come up with one better, is it's that working with, and then before you can share any details about real estate transactions, you have to have that signed. That would be like a lender that somebody, it's shopping loans. I mean, you're kind of familiar with that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people Good Lord, they do that, And that'd be like you saying, well, I'd love to talk to you about estimates and stuff, but I have to sign this. I have to sign a contract with you first. That's not going to work. I mean,
Right.
unless in this situation, this is precisely what you said. Now, when somebody comes and says they want to see a house, I'm going to interject. I absolutely think you should interview several agents about their process before you go with anybody is talk to them. And the reason is you got to figure out if you can work together. See if there's a personality match, a character match, because there's some people that you're just not going to click with, and that's just the way that works.
Yeah.
Where was I going with this? I was pretty
Well,
passionate about it.
just about the conversations that were up front about
Yeah.
when you have to choose your
Thank
agent
you.
or sign the document.
Yeah, and when somebody comes up and says they'd like to see some houses, in the old days, what all of agents would do, most, just depends. When I was with DeSelms, we didn't do this, but most now, we say, I'd love to look at houses with you, but by law, by rule, I guess is really what it is, rule.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a law, but we have to have this documentation signed. So we have to meet at the office so we can go through it. If you don't know somebody, you're going to say, I need to make you familiar with what's going on before we can go tour homes. I'm sorry, but we have to do that. It's a license violation, at least for National Association of Realtors.
Yeah.
And that makes it an easier conversation. It used to be that people would avoid that conversation to the last minute. And then they'd sign the buyer representation agreement minutes before the purchase and sale agreement was signed.
Right. Yeah, and I think if you could have something in your business model, like when somebody calls, it's somebody just out of the blue calls you and says, "Hey, I want to look at this," or it's just like, "Hey, here's the situation in real estate right now. I've got to have a signed agreement with you. Can in your business model, you may say, can we put together an agreement for one day, and I'll be able to get you this information." And then just build your, get to know them, build your relationship with them. And then if they're sign them up for a longer term. So I just think that's in the business model, but overall, I still think it's I think it's a good situation when the buyer and the realtor knows under what circumstances they are working together.
I agree 100%. And I think what this article about today, this section of our show is about, and I've got a real estate course coming out here. It should be ready in just a couple of weeks. It's about the effects of the NAR lawsuit on buyers and sellers. It's how it's affected all of them. It's like, I think it's 14 videos, and it's pretty comprehensive. It's a regular course, not just a YouTube video. But the most important thing, in my opinion, secondary to people knowing what's in that documentation, precisely what you said, Rodney, is the fact that, and these are questions that Angie is asking, is that buyers know enough to ask the questions, to know enough that it's okay to, number one, if you're talking to an agent and you're just not sure, you just got that, I'm not hanging with this person yet, you can demand a touring agreement. Touring agreements are available. And if the agent says, I can't do that, then move on, because you're going to just move on, And like Ange says, she says, I don't have a problem working with an agent if it's a day or so. You can put on a touring agreement, the limit, at least in our company, is 7 days. So if you don't like somebody, you only got to tolerate them 77 days, On the listing or on the buyer representation agreement, you can limit the time on that. It used to be buyer representation agreement I'd do for 6 months. I mean, just because it takes a minute,
Right, right.
and it didn't matter. But now buyers can say, I'll sign up with you under these conditions for 30 days. And put that in stipulations. After 30 days, if you want to continue, you notify each other in writing to do that. That's a big deal. I mean, that's where I'm coming from is buyers got to know that they can ask for these things. That's where things get kind of mucked up is I didn't, after the fact, you hear him say, and this is me on a lot of things, I didn't know you could ask that. I didn't know that. So here's
Yeah.
are we doing okay technically on your end?
I'm still here, so it's got to be A-OK.
Okay, you're just looking around like something got lost there. Anyway, so I'm going to bring up, and we'll probably move on because we've gotten kind of caught up in this. Sorry about that. Must have been a good article. So now Alabama has a law. This is a law that says you can see homes before signing with the realtor. What that tells you is if the legislation is moving, it must have had an impact because, I mean, to get legislation on anything is a trick. And so we've covered all the pros and cons, if you will, of buyer representation agreement. It's good that you know what's going on. It's bad if you don't know that you can have limits, that kind of stuff. Just talk to somebody you trust to teach them to learn what you can and can't do. But Alabama is saying now that because of law, they can supersede this NAR situation, which I'm not sure how does that work? All of a sudden, does that mean that you can't be a realtor anymore because you're breaking the rule, or is that? What do you think on that?
Well, I mean, they just break away from NAR and they don't have to abide by any of that. But they're going to open themselves up to lawsuits that what NAR just settled. But I mean, that's if you don't want to go by NAR, I guess as a real estate agent, you can start your own thing and not be associated with it.
Well, they've started a second class of. It's called a non-participant now here to get access to MLS. It costs more. That's a shock.
Yeah.
That if you're not part of NAR, I guess is the way that it breaks down. I think that is. If my broker was on here, he'd be slapping me around. You should know that. But there's a second. I'm going to call a second class category. Better word for that. Maybe that's what would happen here. But here's my point. And here's some of the things that I'm going to read some of the reasons that people didn't like this thing. Consumers felt pressured. I get that. That's what we've been talking about for 10 minutes. Real estate experts debated whether these contracts protected buyers or simply benefited realtors. The bottom line for me as a purveyor of real estate when I'm working with a buyer is if the buyer representation is signed and we go to contract, I know that I'm getting paid. Now, there's things, believe it or not, if you go under contract, that's when you're actually owed the commission. But very few people actually pull that trigger if they bail, But as we go back and forth with how this is uncomfortable, here's my question and the reason I brought this article up. Because Alabama has written this new law, how many other states do you think is going to go, hey, Alabama did it? What do you think about us doing that? That's my whole point on this.
Well, I think you're safe. And here's why. It's Alabama. And for everybody in Alabama that's offended, good. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait a minute.
I don't think we're going to see a sweeping thing across the United States over this right here. I really don't. I think that this is. I don't know. Like I said, they're fighting. They already lost the lawsuit. Like if you go back to the National Association of Realtors lost a lawsuit saying they did not like, basically, if you want to just say, okay, the suit says you were treating Americans wrong, or how this blah blah. We
Collusion.
got to go this new way. And so I just don't. I just don't. A lot. There's been a lot of it. Did so. What they're going to do right now is that they're going to go outside of parameters of what the lawsuit was, and open themselves back up to a lawsuit. So no, I don't think. Just kidding about Alabama. First, I'm going to tease Alabama because I'm in the. If you see this right here, or this on this side, this is Tennessee, and Alabama. Nick Saban has beat Tennessee in football for 7,000 straight years. No, but in all seriousness, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to sweep the nation. I think it's. I think they're opening themselves up to some serious another litigation. They just lost that same litigation, and they're taking the good part about it and saying, I don't like this part about the whole transaction, the lawsuit.
Yeah,
Like
and I
buyers, this is a great thing for agents. I know, and because it was just never discussed in the previous 100 years. Like
right.
you could go and grab a buyer, and you knew you knew that whatever commission y'all agreed on was going to come from the seller. And it's really the same way. It's just we've got to talk to the client about it up front. Like, hey, potentially you could pay me. This is how it could work. Like,
Yeah.
so.
And Angie's asking a really, really good question. Why are they so eager to break away? What's the advantage for them? What they're trying to do is make it like it was before. They're
Yeah.
trying to avoid the new thing to go back to the way it was. And the problem is, the reason is, I think it is a better way to say that, is because as an agent, it takes chutzpah to say, I'm going to work with you and I'm going to be charging a lot of money to help you sell this or buy this house.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm going to get. And they got to put a number on that. And most agents, I'm telling you, are afraid that somebody's going to go, well, that's too much. What are you doing to earn that? And then you go, okay, you got to come up with this menu of things that you do, justification for the income, and having a good argument for that's the problem. And that's the reason they're trying to, in this particular case, break away from that, because they don't want to have that conversation with somebody up front. Because once somebody gets excited and they make a purchase and sale agreement, they're committed to doing it, and they find the dream home, and they've got a lender like Rodney that says, you're good to go. You're good up to X 100. They're excited. They don't care. All of a sudden, here, sign this. You got it. Here, sign this. Okay. I mean, you're off and running. They don't want to have that conversation, period. And what Rodney is saying, and we can drop it after this, and again, that's the reason I brought this up. That's the first crack in the shield Alabama is, because that there's 49 other states. There's a number of other states going, hey, wait a minute. I mean, you just know there. I just know there is. And that's going to introduce more confusion than there is now. And things have settled down a little bit, but it still doesn't get you past the commission thing, which is not what's on the docket for today. So that's my whole argument with that. It's messing up an already confusing situation that was starting to calm down. And so here we go again.
Yeah, and there might be lawsuits for the next 25 years. And it's that's just the way it is. But in my opinion, I think that I think you're dead on. I think they don't want. They just don't like change. They don't want things. What Angie asked about, why they so eager to break away, is they want it. They want it easy. They want it back the old way. They don't. Nobody likes change. And Andy, there's going to be a million valid points from a realtor's perspective of getting this thing signed. Like it's a hard conversation. It's difficult, but it's a level playing field for everybody. And at the end of the day, it's a conversation that needs to be had up front. And this is what it's forcing everybody to do. And
Yep.
it's. And I get the change, and I get the, when you could have 100 realtors on here, and they'll have a different valid reason, but I just don't think they're going to outweigh what you get at the end of it when you have a buyer and an agent working together, and they have a transaction agreement between them
Yep.
that spells out everything. And that's, to me, that's the most important thing about being transparent in a high dollar transaction.
Yep. And Ange has a question for you. It says, Rodney, have you seen less people qualifying for loans these days? I'm going to assume.
No, the qualification, the market, I guess, if is at where whatever level we're at in how many mortgage-backed securities are being generated. I don't think it's there's no, especially none of the NAR changes has hurt any of the loan qualifications, because honestly, I haven't seen a lot of difference in the transaction. Like how realtors have been paid 50 years ago are the same way they're being paid in today's closings from what I'm seeing. It's basically negotiated with the seller and the sales price and all that other stuff. It's just all part of the deal that's been that way since the beginning of time. It's just, you just have to know how you just have to know how your real estate agent is going to be compensated during a transaction now upfront
Yeah.
versus you had
Yeah.
a lot of people had no clue until even after closing. They're just like, I know I went and bought my house, and it worked.
And that's when you're sitting at the closing table and they're looking at that, what I used to call HUD. I guess they're Altas now. And they're looking at that. Wow.
Yeah.
But now it's all line item on the purchase and sale agreement. And that's what's causing all the sweating and complaining and emotions is
Yes,
it,
and it's
you know,
a huge change. It's a huge conversation change for a realtor, and it's like we've talked about that a bunch. Andy, is like, man, you've got to really dial in your business plan. It's the first time in forever that a realtor's really going to have to detail their value in a different, like. I feel like a lot of times a real estate agent, when people get done with a transaction, they're like, my real estate agent killed it. I love this person. They took care of this. They took care of that. They took care of this. They made it. I was freaking out about this. They calmed me down. All the stuff that you guys do. How do you translate that on a piece of paper now? It's like all this. It's like after you got done, you hear all these kind. Oh, I love my realtor. They did this, this, this. You're just going to have to, hey, maybe even use some testimonials or something. But in your business plan, you're going to have to figure out a way to kind of convey that to customers so they feel comfortable.
it seems to me that over the years that what's worked well for me is because I really do know real estate. I really do. I'm not a lending guy. I never professed to be that, but people are pretty comfortable uh, with my approach to it because I'm pretty low key on that kind of stuff. And I think it's a conundrum for a real estate agent because when people see that real estate transactions go silky smooth, that's what it looks like on the surface. They have no idea what's going on with the
Yeah.
11:30 calls to your lender at night. Hey, this thing's falling apart.
It's real estate. There's just a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of people involved, and there can be human error. There's just all kinds of stuff that's involved. And it takes a lot of people working together, and it's yeah. But to
Yeah.
answer specifically, no, I haven't seen anybody not qualify for a loan due to NAR stuff. Not one single person.
Yeah. So let's thank you for that. I did go on a little bit about it, but I just you watch in the near future. I think that there's going to be some bouncing around a little bit, as if there isn't enough bouncing around going on now. Jeez Louise. The next topic I'd like to bring up, if you're okay with this, Rodney, or
Yeah. Hey, Angie's she just added another question here. How's the splitting agent cost between working? How's the splitting agent cost between going working? Are the sellers still mostly paying the fees or negotiating part of it? It's, to me, I have seen no difference. I have seen absolutely zero difference. I've seen this. It's basically it's always negotiated. Whether it's commissions or closing cost or whatever, all that's been negotiated. And I haven't seen any difference at all. Just though sometimes the way it's worded that just to meet guidelines on how it's worded that they've got to have who's paying it, but other than that, there's nothing. It's
Yeah.
it's been a lot to do about nothing. It's a good change. It just needs to be embraced, and I think once that everybody embraces it, and the realtors who take it on and do a good job with it, they're going to thrive because it's going to be better for them and the customer.
Yeah, and I'll input a little bit on that. What's different now relative to commissions and how they're paid out and that kind of stuff. In the old days, that's before August 17th of last year, as I was alluded to earlier, the commission amount, the shared commission was shared on, it was revealed on the MLS. If it was X percent, I can't say a number because they'll come at me for collusion, but X percent, you'd know what you were going to be, it was being offered before you went ever to see the house. Now what's different is you don't know. You can call them and ask, which isn't recommended. If you're a listing agent, don't tell that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's stupid. But they usually don't figure that out. Most of the people I've talked to, they'll tell you, it's like, who are you working for? But you don't know about the commission and how it breaks down until you're in the negotiation of the purchase and sale agreement. That's what's different. It used to be that was a settled issue behind the scenes, like what we were talking about. Now it's in your face up front, and it's a line item. And so it'll be negotiated up front and in plain language. That's the rule. It has to be in plain language. So that's what's different. And that's what throws a lot of people off, is that there will be home buyers. And you tell me, Rodney, if I need to cut this, I'll stop. But there are home buyers that will say, don't set any showings for a listing where the seller doesn't commit to a certain amount for paying a commission. Just, I don't want to go see those houses. And what they're saying is, I don't want to risk having to pay your commission out of my pocket. That's what they're saying.
Right.
And that's what's different now, is that if you have, what I would say is, let's go anyway. It might be the house of your dreams, and you have no idea what that seller's going to do until you put their feet to the fire.
Right.
You just don't know. And if I were to say if there were any differences, that's what it is. You don't know what the answer is going to be. And you may get into a purchase and sale agreement for the house that you love, and the seller doesn't offer anything, and you can't cover it or don't want to for whatever that, and you may have to walk away because of a commission amount. That's what's different.
It's all the same what you're paying for a house, in my opinion. With the cost of getting into that house is, so yeah.
Yeah.
Good article.
Yep. That would be stupid to say listing the buyer's commission, but yeah.
Yeah, I think they always need to say that we're willing to negotiate, depending on what your offer is, because
Correct.
That's the whole thing. Is like, I would pay double commission. Every listing agent or every seller would pay double commission if they come in with a offer way above listing price.
Yep. Yeah.
So I mean, it's all about the whole deal, but.
I think the secret phrase is what you just said. We're willing to work with you. Just submit your offer and we'll figure it out.
We're selling this house. Let's go.
Yeah. If you mention a certain amount, which isn't binding, and you change that, the buyer's bolting. They're out of there, so give me a great offer and I'll pick it. There you go. See, and that is more power to the seller. That is big time power to the seller. If you say a certain amount, that's how much they're getting charged, period. So see, it's a good topic, and it's been 8 months, 9 months. It's been a while, and it's still out there, still being worked on. So here's the next topic, and this will go faster because I want to get to Rodney's report. This article is about Texas could face imminent housing market price correction. Won't go through all the specifics, but it basically says this. For Texas to match the growing demand, the state began building new homes at a faster pace than any state in the U.S., according to 15% of all new home construction permits in 2024. That was at the end of the pandemic. And if you remember, Texas went nuts with people moving there, getting out of California when COVID and all the rest of it. But now Texas inventory has been rising fast in these slow months. And if you look at Texas on their inventory, it's through the roof. Redfin data shows an even larger number with a total of 151,000 for sale in February, up 16% compared to a year earlier. The reason that they're getting more inventory is because, let's just call a spade, interest rates are interest rates, and they're a bit high and they're not comfortable for people. Plus, they're on the verge of coming down a little bit. That's when people get on the fence. If there's going to be dropping, that's when they're going to climb up on their fence and stay there. As mortgage rates continue lingering between 6 and 7%, the housing costs, including homeowner insurance and property taxes, big deal, home buyers in the U.S. and Texas are still struggling with the lack of affordability. Buyers' reluctance is reflected in the data. Here's the bottom line. This is what I'm getting at without any hard data. The median home sale price of Texas was $337, down just about 1%. That's not much. But the state of Texas is starting to lose steam, and they're starting to lower prices. There's some crazy numbers in here about cuts. How many? 28. Oh, yeah. 28% of homes had their asking price slashed by sellers, up to 2.2% points year over year more. So here's what I'm saying, and the reason I'm bringing up this particular article, and I'd like to hear your take on it. If Texas, and that was one of the faster growing ones, is starting to cut, and everybody talks about price. Hey, look who's here.
Mr. Thirst.
Mr. Thirst. If Texas is down, do you think that this is another domino in terms of the rest of the country? Do you think that the rest of the country is going to continue to soften and prices are going to start to moderate? That's my question.
Probably not. I think I'm going to go back to one of the things that you say all the time. I have to tend to, when I see something in one area like this versus 75 cities, top cities across America, I would start being concerned if I seen more than that. A number of cities, potentially facing a correction. But one, Texas is taxes. If you ever looked at Texas taxes, last time I looked, they are off the charts. I mean, almost
for
double.
Property taxes, right?
Property taxes, yes. So we're in. Think about that. When we're in an area and your property taxes are double, like Texas is double us, we're going to be a more affordable area. So people that have those taxes, like the higher tax cities, Texas, whoever it is, are probably going to have some things. They're going to face these kind of issues when the market dictates it. Like it's all market driven. So, but I don't think it's a beginning of a correction nationwide, because I think if rates were to continue to improve, I think that around here, our housing prices would continue to rise. But the affordability challenges with insurance is off the charts. It's like the states that, California has a lot of the stuff, the coastal states. There are just a lot of issues going on with insurance right now. It's making home prices even more unaffordable.
Yeah, I get it. Well, and so my point on bringing that is when you talk about price correction, that's like 20%. I think when it's a correction, it has to be a pretty significant amount. And when they start talking about that, that's quite a lot.
Well, I thought they were only talking 2 to 3%. You said there.
Well, no, that was the slashing of the list prices, and again, I'm going to make the same argument. Most of the time, listing price corrections they've just listed it too high to begin with. Because the facts are the fact. Dave Ramsey says a house priced correctly and in good condition is going to sell in a good market and a bad market. Doesn't matter where you are. And if a house is sitting, that's what's happening around here. Is there was somebody get their house. It was, I think, Facebook or something. Said, and it was an agent. Not my company, but we've had this on the market 9 months and this house hasn't sold yet. What's the problem? What do you think?
Yeah.
Is there any chance it could be the price? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
Price compensates for everything. It's really a simple, it can be pretty simple. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but at any rate, it's nice to see that I'm betting there's going to be some sort of adjustments go across the country. But you're right. As soon as they start dropping, and who knows what's going to happen with everything that Trump's doing, which got to be careful. So we're going to end that with saying we'll table Texas corrections and see what happens to the rest of the country. In the meantime, we're going to try something new. And here comes Rodney and his report.
Well, you went to we got some new music there. I hope everybody enjoyed that. All right, I'm gonna go in here and just jump in on. Let's talk about tariffs. Since you brought up the Trump administration, have you heard some people? I think a lot of people overseas are calling him the tax man. So I'll give you my 2 cents on this tariff things. And at first, I'm going to say that first, I love them because as an American, we've got a huge deficit, right? I don't know how many trillions of dollars deficit we have, but there's only a few ways of paying that down. One is less government spending, taxes from the people, from us taxpayers. And this is very simplified. And of course, tariffs. And it seems to be with our new administration that they're wanting to equalize the way the United States is handling our tariffs with other countries. Currently, I think we export over $1.3 trillion more than we import. So that means that we bring in $1.3 trillion worth of everybody else's stuff. And then when we go to sell something, they don't take our stuff. Like, a lot of these companies have already come out and said that, they want to renegotiate. But basically on my tariffs thing, and then I'm going to tell you the end of the story, how it's affecting our rates is yesterday there was some fake news that come out on X that said that White House was suspending tariffs for 90 days, except against China. And which was told at 10 o'clock or by 10:30, $3 trillion had moved in the S&P 500 with the equities rally. CNBC picked up that story after somebody put it out on X. CNBC picked it up. Equities, and CNBC said that it was a rumor. They didn't confirm it. So the S&P rallied, trillions of dollars. At 10:30, White House responds and basically says it's fake news. It's not true. And at 10:40, S&P erased $2.5 trillion in earnings there. And what happened was it triggered some margin calls, like, and what a margin call is if something goes down far enough, like a firm may say, okay, hey, you got to pay this. Your margins are being called. You owe us, 100 million or whatever it is. So the easiest way for some of these folks to raise money is to sell treasuries. And that's what yesterday did. Treasuries was a huge sell-off yesterday afternoon because it's an easy way to raise cash and pay off this, pay their margin calls. But, so All that to say is it's crazy volatile, and our mortgage rates have benefited from the tariff talk as far as the inflation has gone down. A lot of the economic factors that were keeping mortgage rates up. So mortgage is actually seeing a benefit from some of the tariff stuff. But that's my very simple rant on tariffs. And personally, I'm a fan of it because I'm a fan for me and my money, meaning this deficit that we can't continue to operate with the United States deficit we have, or else the country's going to face significant hardships. So if we don't get to spending, if we don't do all of these things, tariffs, spending, collecting tax dollars, all this stuff, America's going to be in a bad situation with that deficit. So I'm glad to see the tariffs going on. Do When you shake that big of a tree and you have all these reciprocal tariffs that the administration has put on, it's going to cause an enormous, all kinds of things that you can't predict. It's going to cause stuff in the stock market. But overall, when you look at, in my opinion, when you look at a $1.3 billion trade deficit that we have, it makes sense. It's like we got the best economy around. We don't need all these other countries to make our shirts or whatever it is that we're buying and all that stuff. So I'm kind of glad it's not going to be instant, but I hope that it puts America in a better position to, so our kids ain't dealing with trillions of dollars worth of debt. So that's me. That's my rant on tariffs.
I like it. And Philip's got a question for you.
All right. On the market rates will change. On the bottom right, and bonds are going up. No. What is that saying there? Let me read that again. When the bonds go up, the rates go down. So when that 10-year treasury, like when they were selling those treasuries yesterday, we took a huge hit. Like the mortgage rates, lost what they had made. But it was kind of and this morning's already reacted. It's already stabled out and is a lot more stable. But that was all over a rumor yesterday. Like the Treasury sell-off was because of that rumor started that the tariffs weren't going to be enacted. They was going to be postponed for 90 days. And then, the stock market rallies, by trillions. And then when it was fake news, boom. It's amazing how Wall Street acted on that. But I guess since CNBC picked it up, they gave it some legs. And it just went off to have one of the craziest days we've ever seen in the stock market yesterday.
And that really exemplifies how off the rails one piece of information can take things.
Yes.
I remember seeing that graph yesterday. I was like, God dang, man, wow.
Yes. Trillion, almost 2.5, 2.5 one way and 3 the other way of sell-offs and gains in one day. It was a wild day.
Yeah. So rates are down, but do people have the confidence for major purchases? That's a great question.
I think so. Consumer confidence. I've always used the jobs as not as a consumer confidence index, but jobs really drives the market for whether people are buying. If you feel secure about your job, I think they're more secure about their job than they are interest rates or market and those sort of things. So as long as the job markets are doing well, I mean, I don't know how they figured it, but they added another 200,000 or 300,000 a few days ago from some plant that's moving in. But so I think as long as the job confidence is there, people be purchasing.
I've got 2 points, if I can, if you don't mind, with this. That was really good, Rodney. That was really. Let me play.
It was a second grade level education on tariffs. I mean, if somebody listens to this and understands tariffs, they're gonna be like, "God, that guy is just like flying over the 747 jet, not even touching."
Two things. When Angie's talking about rates are down, but do people have confidence in the major purchases? The bottom line, the way that I see it as a professional, a buyer will know if their job is secure, if their relationship is secure. I mean, buying a house is a life thing unless you're having a change of relationships. There's things called divorce. That does happen. But when somebody's going to buy a house, they have to take stock of their job security. Are they on an upward trend, or at least a really solid trend? I could imagine that if there were government people, in government positions, they might be a little shook by what's going on. I mean, you might be. I mean, to get you might be shook. So if the buyer is ready financially and relationship wise, meaning relationship with their job and the rest of it, then they should buy. If they're confident with that, then they're okay. If there's any question marks, don't. There was a guy I was talking to this week, or it was last week, and he had a lot of bonuses and stuff. I said, get to the point where you're earning enough without the bonuses to do it. Be careful about that. About how you're making your money. Meaning too many bonuses, they can drop off. If the quota changes or something like that, that can change. I know Rodney probably has different ideas on that. On Philip, he was talking about on the market, rates will change on the, whoops, sorry. I've noticed recently that people have improved their homes over what's going on standard-wise is the way I read that. And they ask more than the local market will bear. Got a really quick 2-minute story. Listed a house up in a place called, I think it's called Mountain Shadows. And it's across the street from Governor's Club. Nice area. And this was it was an executive house. It was really nice. It was probably 4,500 square feet. And it was really nice. But when this guy bought it, it was new, it was a new construction. And they were new to town, and they were convinced that they're going to be the house of their dreams, live there for the rest of their life. And the wife, and this is him telling me this, and this is like a number of years ago, and his wife went big on everything, like the big windows and the fixtures and just upgraded the heck out of this new construction home to where it was back in when they were selling back in the day. It was like 750. By the time he got done, it was $1 million just from the upgrades, because you can do that. You can do that. Now, if you do comps on that house, which is what I did, without the the comps on that house was 750, maybe 8, because it's got some nice stuff in there. But you can overbuild the heck out of a house where you'll never get the ROI. I mean, you're familiar with that, I guess, I would imagine, yeah. Rodney.
Yeah, it's a lot of times, when the builders are making the upgrades and stuff, that they get you to pay for them out of pocket, and then the good ones will say, "Hey, do you realize that this may not increase your value? Like,
yep. Mm-hmm.
If you're putting in these Viking appliances, that's a $25,000 upgrade. When we close, you're going to have the same square footage as your neighbor, and they're going to be able to bull an egg on that very nice stove that they got in the same amount of time you can bull an egg. So it's going to be, that's the thing you look at is like, you get somebody that loves a kitchen, they're going to if they put $25,000 into their kitchen, they're going to get the use out of it, right? But it may not be, you may not get the value on resale.
Yeah,
of course. Because, the builders are going to sell you this price. Now, the good thing about building is, in my opinion, like you go buy this house for $1 million and you sign a contract and it takes 10 months to build or a year.
Yep.
You've bought it for $1 million. So what you're hoping is when you close, it's worth 1.1 or $1,075,000.
Mm-hmm.
You're not hoping it's worth, if you're hoping it's worth 300 because you put an extra 100,000 in upgrades in it, it's not going to happen.
Yep. Yep. It was just, but the story is the same. When I did comps and I said, this is probably what it's going to go for, that's just what we got. Yeah. And we listed, and it sat for the longest time. And I kept telling them, I told them when we listed, I says, look, don't get mad at me if it doesn't sell on this price, just don't. And we ended up, I think he did okay, but he sure didn't get his up. Somebody got a really good deal on that house. They got some some nice upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of it's easy. Some of it will help you sell your house. Like a kitchen will help you sell your house immensely. But
Faster.
but when you remember when everybody was doing that, treating their house like an igloo and getting all that stuff, getting all the stuff put in there, and it was another 20,000 or whatever it was for the up in the insulation and stuff. They'd put it down in the brick and they'd put it everywhere. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Encapsulated. Oh
yeah,
man.
you're not gonna. Yeah, that's probably not going to help your house sell. Nobody. Not a lot of people care about how your house is insulated. But anyways,
And then Angie's got a comment with the tariffs, though many are worried about their job. It's gonna be a rough patch for a minute.
see, I just think the tariffs are going to affect other countries worse than it's going to affect us.
Well,
Like
we got
they're already begging to come in. This whole thing has been a big negotiation tactic, anyways, and they're already begging for deals. I mean, I think they're lining up to talk to this administration to work out because basically they buy none of our stuff and we buy all of their stuff. So you could jack up these tariffs to 10 million% for me, and I'm glad. Thing that bothers me is you take a lot like a sports company. One of these sports companies in America, Nike, Adidas, or
yeah.
Adidas may be in Germany. So why do you think that they've had plants in Vietnam and China and everywhere else? Because they've been paying these 8-year-olds to work on their clothes. And
Yeah.
it's like, of course, that's just unfair to treat, So if you can go to another company and get cheaper labor, that's fine. Just sell it over there, is my opinion.
Hmm.
You know,
Inter-
bring it here. Our job should increase. I mean, that's what's going to happen. Is I think that now, if you're in government, if I work for the government, I wouldn't be buying a house. I'd be getting my resume buffed up because they're getting rid of a lot of government people. But outside of that, I think the job market is going to be better over the years. Does he, Angie? If he's not working for the government, I think you're safe. Like if he's working for CFPB, they come in and shut that down. I think they went to one of these Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, the government sponsored entity now, and they went in there, some building, and there was like supposed to be several thousand people there, and there's like 20 in these buildings. So
ghost town.
yeah, as long as he's not one of those jobs, I think he's probably going to be pretty safe.
Well, that's really interesting. Well,
I've got one moving back from college in May, but I got one moving out, so
it's a sum zero total on that then.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'm most excited about we've just run out of time. So next week we'll do our Reddit radar, which I'm really excited about.
It didn't make the cut, Andy.
Well, I got yappy. Sorry about that. I'm not sorry about that. I had fun. That was great. Philip, Angie, I am so glad to see our California girl. I'm just so glad. It really warms my heart. Philip, Wendy, I know she's in there someplace. So glad to see you guys. We're glad to be back. We'll streamline this. I'll figure out we'll streamline this thing.
We're going to do the same thing next year.
Well, I know 3 articles for Reddit we got for next week. So
yeah.
Rodney, any final thoughts? That was really good on Rodney Report. I thought that was really good.
I appreciate that. No, appreciate it. Good to see Angie and the Thirst. Good to catch up with you guys again. Good to catch up on some chatting, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, buddy.